Antigonid Kingdom is one of the starting nations that this game consider as a hard difficulty. This video will show you why, if you haven't played as Antigonid Kingdom before, but most of all, it's going to be a survival guide showing you how to survive the first few years as Antigonid Kingdom to become the strongest power in the world. Antigonid Kingdom starts out the game as one of the heirs to Alexander the Great's old empire. Together with Egypt, Macedon, Thrace and the Seleucid Empire, they are the Diadochi. And early on, the Diadochis get this event. We get claims on each other's lands, and as Antigonid Kingdom, we get a special one. If we fail to conquer Corinthus before our leader dies, or if we lose a few named provinces that we start with, some parts of our land will be split up and we're going to lose it. So we need to do that before our ruler dies. And it doesn't take long before another event puts that to a test. We have to pick between going to war right now versus Macedon or give up all that land, and we're going to lose quite a few of our subjects. And as you can tell, our leader is really old at the start. We don't have much time to capture that province. We don't want to lose that land. So there's really just one option for us. We have to go to war now. And to put even more pressure on us, usually shortly after you go to war versus Macedon, your ruler gets an event, he gets a trait, a bad stuff, that means he's going to start dying even quicker. If it was just for the event versus Macedon, this wouldn't be too bad. The Golden Kingdom is definitely stronger than Macedon in the beginning, and we have the potential to take the needed province before our ruler dies. The main problem is that all the other Diadochis have claims on us, and we start in the middle of all of them. When we are at war, the other Diadochis will see their opportunity and start declaring war on us one by one. And fighting at 4 fronts at the same time, especially against 4 of the strongest starting nations in game, is a good way to set yourself up for failure. Soon they will come pouring in with troops from every direction. It's very easy to get overwhelmed, and things becomes a bad story. There are a way to get around having to fight every single one of them. But some of those nations decide to join the war. They often give us an option between war or giving them a large chunk of our land. So if you give them the land, we don't have to fight them. And without fighting them, we're probably going to be strong enough to beat Macedon. But it's going to come with a huge price, losing half our nation without even fighting for it. This is not the start we wanted. We wanted to become the #1 superpower in the world, not end up as an gimped out version of the old glorious Antigonid Kingdom. Let's do it the right way. Let's learn how to win as the Antigonid Kingdom. Just as in real life, most things in Imperator is better with friends. So what better way to prevent the Diadochis from attacking us than allying them? The problem is that as soon as the War of Diadochi event triggers and they get claim on our land, they will become hostile to us. But before that event triggers, both Egypt and Thrace are willing to become our allies. And even Macedon would be our ally, but we know that alliance would be worthless because we need to conquer one of their provinces to not lose a lot of land. I also picked up some extra non-Diadochi alliances, and as Antigonid Kingdom you start with guaranteeing some nations. I broke those guarantees to not go over the relationship limit, and I started moving my troops towards Macedon ASAP. So I played through this part multiple times in different saves, and it usually didn't take long after the event when we get claims on each other until I got the message that my allies wanted to break the alliance because they now had claims on my land. So what I decided to do, what I learned, was to more or less go to war against Macedon ASAP. In this save here, I didn't even wait for the go to war against Macedon event to trigger that I showed you guys earlier. I decided to declare the war normally and do it ASAP. And of course, as long as you're fighting in a war together, your allies won't be able to break that alliance. Another good thing multiple playthroughs of this start taught me were that as long as you're allied to both Egypt and Thrace, the Seleucid Empire won't declare war on you, which means we only need to focus on one front for this war. This tactic worked really well in all my tries except one, because in that try, Thrace allied Macedon, which meant that when I declared war versus Macedon, Thrace would help them. But I came up with a tactic that made it work pretty well. I allied Thrace's neighbors Mosia and Getia, and they were both of course much weaker than Thrace, but it basically got the effect where Thrace's army went down to my subjects' land and started sieging down the fort, and while they were doing that, Mosia's and Getia's tiny armies went out to start sieging down Thrace's land, which got their army to turn back, abandoning the siege and go back to their own land, trying to fight off their invaders. And when their land was clear, they went back to the forts to siege it down. And then Mosia's and Getia's armies picked out again and started to siege down Thrace's land. So basically Thrace's army went back and forth, the whole fight, and didn't manage to do much during the whole war. But of course this meant that the Seleucid Empire would join. I allowed them to siege down some of my land, but I also hired a mercenary stack with a really strong general, not to be able to like really beat them back, but to win like certain battles and prevent them to take too much land until I was done with the Macedon war. And of course, as soon as I was done with the Macedon war, I turned my troops to the east and started fighting back for real. But in the rest of the tries, I had Thrace on my side, which made the Macedon war very easy. Without too much time, we could conquer all of their land and take a big chunk out of it ourselves. And of course, this meant that we had Corinthians, and the event costing us land and subjects wouldn't trigger. As soon as we were in peace though, this message popped up: breaking alliance. Egypt are considering leaving us and breaking the alliance. And I'm betting that if we just wait a little bit longer, we will get a similar message for Thrace. So there was only one solution, because I still needed Egypt and Thrace. We need to go to another war. And that war was of course versus the Seleucid Empire. We needed to make use of all those good claims we got from the Diadochi event. And of course they are the strongest of our nearby enemies, so we wanted to gimp them. And I declared this war ASAP, so Egypt and Thrace didn't have time to break the alliance. They were forced to stay friends with us. And that meant our army was on the other side of, not the world, but the other side of a nation. I hired that big strong Merc army that I showed you previously in this video, and while that army had to be the first line of defense, I started boating over my troops, and of course my friends in Egypt and Thrace did the same. They brought in the cavalry, and Antigonid Kingdom together with Egypt and Thrace is definitely stronger than the Seleucid Empire, and it took some time, it took some sieges, it was a little bit back and forth, but we managed to siege down more and more of their land until finally we could take a big chunk out of it in the peace deal. And that peace deal was actually done before our ruler died. So we managed to not only secure the land in Macedon, we managed to take a big chunk out of the Seleucid Empire before it was time for him to pass away. And now we no longer care if Egypt or Thrace want to break that alliance. As a matter of fact, we're probably going to break the alliances ourselves, because now we are the undisputed strongest power in the world, and we're going to be coming for their land next. Maybe going for that decision to reunite Alexander's old empire. Of course, I just took some random land in this video. You could snake your way towards those provinces to quickly grab the right ones. And the same when you later on take provinces from Egypt and Thrace. But talking about Thrace, you can become extremely powerful very quickly as Thrace. Right now on the screen there should be a video card linking you directly to a video showing you how to do it. If you found this guide helpful, press that like button, it helps me out. And of course, if you want to see more Imperator Rome content, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.